Hello, and welcome back to another journey into the past. Tonight, we're going to step softly into the world of medieval Europe, into those quiet centuries when the earth seemed wider and darker than it does now, when the forests pressed close against village walls, and when the night held mysteries that no lamp could fully chase away. If you're settling in for the evening, perhaps you've dimmed the lights around you. Perhaps you're lying somewhere comfortable, feeling the weight of the day begin to lift from your shoulders. That's good. Let yourself sink a little deeper into that comfort. There's nowhere you need to be right now, nothing you need to do. Just listen, and let your mind wander back through the centuries with me. Take a slow breath. Feel yourself becoming still. The present moment fades, just a little, and the past begins to emerge like a landscape through morning mist. You're safe here. You're simply listening, simply drifting, simply allowing yourself to imagine a world very different from your own, yet somehow deeply familiar in its humanity, in its fears and hopes and quiet routines. We're going to explore something gentle tonight, something human and strange and oddly comforting in its own way. We're going to walk through the lives of ordinary people who lived 600, 700, 800 years ago, and we're going to discover what they believed. Not the grand beliefs of kings and churches, but the small, daily superstitions that shaped how a farmer's wife salted her bread, or how a miller watched the sky before a storm, or how a child learned to step across a threshold. These weren't educated guesses or scientific theories. These were certainties, passed down from grandmother to grandchild, from neighbor to neighbor, truths as solid as the ground beneath their feet. And tonight, we'll understand why. Imagine, if you will, a village in autumn. The year is sometime in the 13th century, though the exact date hardly matters. Time moved differently then, marked by seasons and saints' days rather than numbers on a page. The village sits in a shallow valley, surrounded by fields that have just been harvested. Stubble covers the ground in pale gold rows. Beyond the fields, the forest begins, dark and dense, a place where few people venture after sunset. The houses are small, most of them. Timber frames filled with wattle and daub, thatched roofs that need mending each year. You can see where the thatch has been patched, where fresh straw shows golden against the weathered gray. Smoke rises from holes in those roofs, carrying the smell of peat fires and cooking, of barley and turnips and sometimes, on fortunate days, a bit of salted pork. The streets, if you can call them that, are narrow paths of packed earth, turning to mud when the rains come. You can see the ruts made by cart wheels, the depressions where countless feet have walked the same paths for generations. As evening falls, the light changes in that particular way autumn light does, becoming rich and golden, almost liquid. The sun sinks behind the hills, and shadows grow long across the village, stretching and distorting until familiar things take on unfamiliar shapes. This is the time of day when work ends, when families gather inside, when doors are closed and barred. Not locked, mind you. Few doors have locks. But barred, with a heavy wooden beam set across the inside, because the night is coming, and the night is different. The quality of sound changes too. The daytime noises fade. The hammering from the blacksmith's forge falls silent. The calls of vendors and the clatter of carts cease. In their place comes a deeper quiet, broken only by the lowing of cattle being led to their barns, the creak of well ropes, the murmur of evening prayers drifting from open doorways before those doorways close for the night. Let's step inside one of these homes now, following the warm glow of firelight through a small window. The door opens with a creak, and we find ourselves in a single room, perhaps 15 feet across. The floor is earth, packed hard and swept clean. Dried herbs hang from the rafters, bundles of lavender and thyme and sage, their scent mixing with the smoke. A pot simmers over the fire, releasing steam that curls upward. And there, near the hearth, sits a woman named Eleanor. Eleanor is perhaps 30 years old, though she would never count her age in that way. She knows she was born in the year the old Lord died, and that's enough. Her hands are busy with wool and spindle, twisting fibers into thread with a rhythm she learned as a child, a rhythm so deeply ingrained that her hands continue their work even when her mind wanders elsewhere. Her daughter, Agnes, sits nearby on a three-legged stool, watching and learning, her own smaller hands attempting to mimic her mother's movements. The fire pops softly, sending up a small shower of sparks. Outside, the last light fades from the sky, leaving only a deep blue glow along the western horizon. "Careful," Eleanor says quietly, and Agnes looks up. A black cat has appeared in the doorway, its eyes catching the firelight and reflecting it back in twin points of green. It's a neighbor's cat, come looking for mice or warmth. Agnes starts to rise, to shoo it away, but Eleanor shakes her head. "Don't," she says. "Let it choose its own path." You see, Eleanor knows something that Agnes is still learning. A black cat crossing your threshold uninvited is an omen, and omens must be respected. If you chase the cat away, you're interfering with fate, and that's dangerous. Better to let it enter or leave as it will, and then read the meaning afterwards. The cat pauses, one paw raised delicately, considering. Its whiskers twitch. Its ears swivel, listening to sounds only it can hear. Then it turns and slips back into the darkening street, moving with that liquid grace that cats possess, dissolving into the shadows as though it were made of shadow itself. Eleanor lets out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The cat chose to leave. That's good. That means the bad luck it carried has passed by without touching them. Why do we fear them? Agnes asks, not for the first time. She's at the age where questions come easily, where the world is still new enough to seem strange. Eleanor's spindle continues its steady rotation, the weight at the bottom pulling the thread taut. "Black cats walk between worlds," she says simply. "They can see things we cannot. Spirits favor them. When a black cat looks at you, it's not just the cat looking. It's everything behind the cat, all the invisible things, watching through its eyes." This isn't superstition to Eleanor. This is fact, as real as the wool in her hands. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from a time beyond memory. And in a world without streetlights, without glass windows, without any of the barriers we've built between ourselves and the dark, these beliefs make sense. They provide structure. They give names to the unnamed fears that creep in when the sun goes down. The night deepens. The fire burns lower. Eleanor adds another piece of peat, and sparks rise toward the smoke-blackened rafters, dancing upward before winking out. The room smells of earth and smoke and wool, smells that have filled this space for years, that have seeped into the very walls. In another house, across the village, a different scene unfolds. Here, in a slightly larger home, lives Thomas the carpenter. He's working late, by the light of a single tallow candle, finishing a repair on a bench. The candle flame is small, uncertain, casting more shadow than light. His wife, Margaret, prepares bread for tomorrow, kneading dough on a wooden board worn smooth by countless repetitions of this same task. Her hands press and fold, working the dough until it becomes elastic and alive under her palms. The wind has picked up outside. It whistles through gaps in the walls, making the candle flame dance and waver. Margaret pauses in her kneading, listening. There's something in the sound of the wind tonight, something that makes her uneasy. It doesn't sound like simple wind. It sounds almost purposeful. Thomas notices her stillness. "What is it?" "The wind," she says quietly. "Listen to how it moans." They both fall silent. Yes, there it is. A low sound, rising and falling, almost like a voice calling from far away. Almost like words, though no words can be distinguished. "Someone will die before the new moon," Margaret whispers. Thomas doesn't argue. He knows she's right. Wind that sounds like voices is wind that carries messages from the dead, calling to the living. It's an omen that cannot be ignored. Margaret crosses herself and returns to her kneading, but her movements are more hurried now. She wants the bread ready so she can cover it properly before bed. Bread left uncovered at night can be cursed by passing spirits. Everyone knows this. The bread will still rise, still bake, but those who eat it will fall ill with wasting sickness, growing thinner and weaker until they fade away entirely. She shapes the dough into a rounded mound, covers it with a clean cloth, and then, almost without thinking, she presses a small cross into the top with her thumb. An extra protection. You can never be too careful. Thomas finishes his work and puts his tools away, each in its proper place. The placement of tools matters too. Crossed tools mean crossed luck. A knife left with its blade pointing toward the door will cut the household's fortune. Scissors left open will snip away happiness. These aren't mere habits. They're necessities. As they prepare for bed, Margaret sweeps the hearth one final time. The broom must never stand upright against the wall at night, bristles up. That invites unwelcome visitors. Instead, she lays it down carefully, parallel to the floor, so that any witch attempting to enter will trip over it and lose her power. You might smile at this, hearing it now. A broom as protection against witches. But consider for a moment what witches meant to medieval people. They weren't fantasy. They weren't stories told to frighten children. They were real as your neighbors, because sometimes they were your neighbors. A witch, in the medieval mind, was someone who had made a bargain with dark forces. Someone who could sour milk with a glance, spoil crops with a whispered curse, cause children to sicken and die. And the terrifying thing was that witches looked like everyone else. They lived among you. Smiled at you. Borrowed your tools and shared your well. How did you know who was a witch? You watched for signs. Did they have a black cat? Did they mutter to themselves? Did misfortune follow them? Were they too ugly, or too beautiful? Did they live alone? Did they have knowledge of herbs and healing? Were they too old, too young, too strange? The criteria were impossible, contradictory, and that made them all the more frightening. Anyone could be a witch. Which meant everyone had to be careful. In her small cottage at the edge of the village, an old woman named Beatrice sits alone by her fire. She is perhaps 60, ancient by medieval standards. Her husband is long dead, taken by a fever 5 winters ago. Her children have scattered to other villages, other lives. She lives by herself now, growing herbs in a small garden, offering remedies to those who need them. She knows what people say about her. She's heard the whispers, seen the signs crossed when she passes. Old woman, living alone, with knowledge of plants and their properties. Of course they suspect her. But Beatrice is not a witch. She's simply someone who learned from her grandmother which leaves ease a fever, which roots calm a troubled stomach, which flowers, dried and sewn into a small cloth bag, help a child sleep through the night without nightmares. Still, she's careful. She avoids black cats, even though she loves them. She never curses, even when cursing would feel good. She goes to church every Sunday and says her prayers loudly enough for others to hear. She smiles at children and never, ever stares at anyone for too long. Tonight, she checks her doors and windows twice, making sure everything is secure. Not because she fears thieves. Thieves are a distant concern. She fears the villagers themselves, fears the moment when suspicion might harden into certainty, when whispers might become shouts. She adds rosemary to her fire. The smoke carries a clean, sharp scent through the room. Rosemary wards off evil spirits, yes, but it also shows observers that you are warding them off, that you yourself are not in league with darkness. These are the calculations of survival in a world governed by superstition. The night grows later. The village settles into an uneasy sleep. Dogs bark occasionally, but no one knows why. Perhaps at shadows. Perhaps at things that cast no shadows. In the house where Eleanor and Agnes live, there's a sudden sound. Agnes has sneezed, once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. Eleanor's eyes snap open. She was just drifting off, but now she's fully awake, her heart beating faster. 3 sneezes in a row. That's a sign. But of what? She tries to remember. 1 sneeze means someone is thinking of you. 2 sneezes means someone is speaking ill of you. But 3? 3 sneezes in the dark of night. She searches her memory, reaching for the knowledge passed down to her. Ah. Yes. 3 sneezes means the devil is near, trying to steal your soul through your open mouth. Quickly, Eleanor makes the sign of the cross. God bless you, she whispers urgently to Agnes. The blessing is a protection, a way of sealing the soul back inside the body before it can be snatched away. Agnes, half asleep, murmurs the same blessing back to her mother, because that's what you do. You say it without thinking, without questioning, because the consequences of not saying it are too terrible to contemplate. The moment passes. The crisis, if it was a crisis, is over. Eleanor lies back down, but it takes her a long time to sleep again. She listens to the sounds of the night, to the creaking of the wooden beams, to the scurrying of mice in the thatch above, to her own breathing and Agnes's breathing creating a rhythm in the darkness. This is what it meant to live in the medieval world. Every small occurrence was weighted with significance. Every action had consequences that rippled outward into the invisible realm. You couldn't simply sneeze, or spill salt, or break a mirror. Each event was a thread in a vast web of cause and effect, connecting you to forces beyond your understanding. And mirrors. Let's speak of mirrors for a moment, though mirrors were rare in medieval villages. Few people owned them. They were expensive, fragile, made of polished metal or, in later centuries, silvered glass. But those who had them treated them with great care, and not just because of their cost. A mirror, you see, doesn't simply reflect your face. It captures your soul. Or at least, it captures a piece of your soul, holding it within the glass. This is why you must never let a mirror break. When a mirror shatters, it releases that captured piece of soul, and the soul, fragmented and confused, cannot find its way back to you. Instead, it wanders, causing 7 years of misfortune for its owner. 7 years. Why 7? Because 7 is a number of power, a number of completion. 7 days in creation. 7 deadly sins. 7 sacraments. 7 years to seal a curse. In the manor house, on the hill above the village, Lady Catherine owns a small mirror, a treasure brought back from the East by her late husband. She keeps it wrapped in silk, takes it out only when necessary. The silk itself is precious, dyed a deep crimson that seems to glow in candlelight. When she does look into the mirror, she's always careful, always respectful. She says a small prayer before and after, a kind of negotiation with the object and whatever forces reside within it. Tonight, like the villagers below, she sleeps uneasily. The wind continues its moaning song. The darkness presses against the shutters. And in her dreams, she sees omens. Dreams were taken very seriously in the medieval world. They weren't simply the brain sorting through the day's events. They were messages, warnings, prophecies. The future spoke through dreams, and learning to interpret them was crucial. Water in dreams meant emotion, change, sometimes danger. Dreaming of clear water meant good fortune. Muddy water meant trouble approaching. Dreaming of drowning meant being overwhelmed by forces beyond your control. Birds in dreams were messengers. A dove meant peace. A raven meant death. An owl meant secrets would be revealed. And teeth. If you dreamed your teeth were falling out, that was among the worst omens possible. It meant someone close to you would die soon, a member of your family, someone whose loss would leave a gap as noticeable as a missing tooth. Lady Catherine wakes before dawn, her heart heavy. She dreamed of teeth, of spitting them into her hand one after another, each one white and whole and terrible. She knows what this means. She knows that death is coming for someone she loves. All she can do is pray, and wait, and watch. The sun rises slowly, reluctantly, on another medieval day. The village stirs. Doors open. Animals are fed. The world continues. But everyone carries their superstitions with them like invisible armor, like a map of dangerous territory. Don't step on a crack in the threshold. Don't walk backward across your own shadow. Don't let the fire go out completely, or the household's luck goes with it. Don't spill salt without throwing a pinch over your left shoulder, where the devil stands waiting. Don't whistle at night, or you'll summon spirits. Don't open an umbrella indoors. Don't kill a spider. Don't trust a stranger who won't share bread with you. Don't. The prohibitions were endless, but they provided structure. They gave people a sense of control in a world where control was largely an illusion. And then there were the protections, the positive actions you could take. Hang a horseshoe over your door, open end up, so luck can collect inside it. Plant rosemary by your doorstep. Keep a piece of iron by your bed to ward off fairies. Carry a rabbit's foot for fortune. Wear your clothes inside out if you find yourself lost in the forest, to confuse the spirits leading you astray. Say your prayers at dawn and at dusk, the dangerous in-between times when the barriers between worlds grow thin. These weren't silly habits. They were survival techniques. In the bakery, the baker marks each loaf with a cross before sliding it into the oven. In the smithy, the blacksmith plunges red-hot iron into water while whispering a charm his father taught him. In the church, the priest rings the bells at certain hours, not just to call the faithful, but to frighten away demons who cannot bear the sound of blessed metal. Everyone participates. Everyone believes. And in believing, they create a shared reality, a world where these superstitions have power because everyone agrees that they have power. Think about lucky and unlucky days. Friday was feared, especially Friday the 13th, because Friday was the day of the crucifixion, a day marked by death and betrayal. No one married on Friday. No one began a journey on Friday. No one made important decisions on Friday if they could possibly avoid it. Monday was for fresh starts, for new beginnings. Wednesday was good for commerce and contracts. Sunday, of course, was sacred, set apart, a day when even plowing your field could bring divine punishment. And then there were the feast days and saints' days, each with their own particular qualities and dangers. Saint Agnes's Eve was a night when young women might see visions of their future husbands if they performed the right rituals. Saint John's Eve was a night of powerful magic, when herbs gathered at midnight would have tripled their usual potency. All Hallows' Eve, the night before November 1st, was when the dead walked freely and the living had to be most careful. The year itself was a map of supernatural significance, each day marked with invisible warnings and opportunities. As the sun climbs higher, Agnes leaves her mother's house to fetch water from the well. She carries a wooden bucket, worn smooth by years of use. The well is at the center of the village, a communal gathering place where news is shared and gossip spreads like ripples across water. 3 other women are there when Agnes arrives. They nod to her, but they're deep in conversation, speaking in low, worried tones. "I heard it was Sarah's cow that gave blood instead of milk," one of them says. "I heard it was both her cows, and her goat as well," another adds. "A curse," the third woman says flatly. "Someone has cursed her household." Agnes listens while she waits her turn at the well. She knows Sarah, knows the small farm at the northern edge of the village. And she knows that if Sarah's animals are producing blood instead of milk, Sarah is ruined. The animals will have to be slaughtered. She'll have no income, no way to feed her children. But more than that, the curse itself is terrifying. Someone with that kind of power, able to corrupt life at its source, to turn nourishment into poison, that someone must be found and stopped. The women lower their voices further, but Agnes catches fragments. They're discussing suspects. The old woman, Beatrice. The widow from the next village who came here a year ago. The girl with the red hair who always seems to be watching. Agnes fills her bucket and hurries away, suddenly afraid. These conversations have a way of spiraling, of growing more heated until someone is seized, until someone is accused in front of the whole village, until someone is hurt. She doesn't want to be part of that. She doesn't want to see it. But she knows it happens. She's seen it before, though she was younger then and didn't fully understand. The water sloshes in her bucket as she walks, cold and clear. She's careful not to spill any. Spilled water is wasted blessing, and waste brings punishment. Back home, Eleanor takes the water gratefully. She's preparing a meal, such as it is. Pottage, mostly. Vegetables and grain boiled together, flavored with a bit of fat if they're lucky. The same meal her mother made, and her mother's mother, stretching back through generations. As she works, she hums quietly to herself. Not a song, exactly. Just a tuneless sound, a way of filling the silence. But even this is done with care. You don't hum too loudly, or too cheerfully, or the neighbors might think you're happy while they suffer, and that invites the evil eye. The evil eye. Another ever-present danger. Someone who looks at you with envy or malice can, even unintentionally, cast misfortune upon you. This is why you remain modest. Why you hide good fortune. Why you never boast. Why, if you have a healthy child, you might sometimes speak of them as sickly, just to avoid attracting jealous attention. The entire social fabric was woven through with these considerations, these tiny negotiations with fate and other people's emotions and the unseen powers that governed everything. Afternoon fades into evening once more. The cycle continues. Thomas returns from his work, sawdust clinging to his tunic, the smell of fresh cut wood following him through the door. Margaret serves the evening meal. Beatrice sits alone in her cottage, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle, the stone making a steady, rhythmic sound against stone. Lady Catherine walks through her manor, checking that every candle is properly placed, that no chair casts a cross-shaped shadow, that everything is in order. The sun sets behind the hills, and once again, the village transforms. Doors close. Fires are built up. Families gather in small pools of light surrounded by vast oceans of darkness. And in that darkness, anything might be waiting. This is not to say that medieval people lived in constant terror. They didn't. They laughed and loved and worked and played. They celebrated marriages and births. They gathered for festivals. They found joy in small things. But the superstitions were always there, a constant undercurrent, a set of rules that couldn't be broken without consequence. You could forget them for a while, distracted by daily life, but they always came back. A black cat crossing your path. A mirror reflecting a dying candle. A sneeze at the wrong moment. An owl calling 3 times from the forest. Reminders. Always reminders. The night deepens. In Eleanor's house, the fire burns low once more. Agnes is already asleep, curled up on a straw mattress near the wall. Eleanor sits alone, her spindle forgotten in her lap, staring into the embers. She's thinking about tomorrow. About the bread she needs to bake. About the weeding that needs to be done in the small garden plot. About her husband, who's been away for 3 days, traveling to the next town to sell the cloth she's been weaving all year. He should be home tomorrow. She hopes. If the roads are safe. If he doesn't encounter bandits, or wolves, or any of the countless dangers that lurk beyond the village boundaries. She said a protection prayer over him before he left, taught to her by her grandmother. She sewed a small iron nail into the hem of his cloak, where it wouldn't be noticed. Iron protects. Everyone knows this. And she's been careful not to sweep the floor after sunset while he's away, because sweeping at night sweeps the absent household members further from home, delays their return, sometimes prevents it entirely. These small magics. These tiny efforts to influence a world that feels too large and too dangerous and too indifferent. Eleanor finally sets aside her spindle and banks the fire for the night, covering the coals with ash so they'll stay alive until morning. Letting the fire die completely is terrible luck. The fire is the heart of the home. As long as it lives, the household lives. Let it die, and you invite death into your home. She settles onto her own mattress, pulling a rough woolen blanket over herself. The night is cool. Autumn is advancing. Soon it will be winter, and winter is the hardest time, when food grows scarce and illness spreads and the cold seems to seep into your very bones. But she tries not to think about that now. She closes her eyes and breathes slowly, listening to Agnes's quiet breathing, to the settling sounds of the house, to the distant barking of dogs. And somewhere in the darkness outside, the church bell tolls the hour. 1, 2, 3. For chimes, marking the passage of time, marking the fact that the village still stands, that the night has not yet swallowed everything. The sound fades. Silence returns. Eleanor sleeps at last. Across the village, in house after house, similar scenes unfold. People lying in darkness, protected only by their beliefs, by the small rituals they've performed, by the charms they've placed and the prayers they've said. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps belief itself is a kind of protection, not against actual demons or curses, but against the overwhelming uncertainty of existence. When you believe the horseshoe will bring luck, when you believe the iron nail will ward off evil, when you believe your prayers are heard and answered, you can sleep a little easier. You can face the morning with a bit more courage. As another day dawns, the village wakes to find that the fears of the night have receded once more. The sun climbs into a pale autumn sky. Frost glitters on the grass in the shadowed places, slowly melting as warmth returns to the world. In the house of the miller, at the northern edge of the village where the stream runs fast and cold, another superstition governs the morning routine. The miller's wife, Joan, rises before dawn as she always does. But before she does anything else, before she stirs the fire or fetches water or begins any task, she must ensure that she puts her right shoe on first. Left before right brings sorrow and spite. This rhyme has governed her mornings for as long as she can remember. Her mother taught it to her. Her mother's mother taught it to her mother. And so the knowledge passes down, simple and absolute. Joan sits on the edge of her bed in the pre-dawn darkness, feeling for her shoes with sleep-clumsy hands. Right first. Always right first. To do otherwise is to invite misfortune into the entire day, to set everything off balance from the very beginning. She finds the right shoe, slips her foot into it, and only then reaches for the left. There. The day can begin properly now. This might seem like a small thing, a trivial concern. But in a world where a single bad harvest means starvation, where a broken leg can mean death, where illness strikes without warning and takes without mercy, every small thing matters. Every tiny protection is worth maintaining. Joan moves through her morning tasks with practiced efficiency. She rekindles the fire, adds water to the pot, begins preparing the morning meal. And as she works, she's careful not to place any item on the table in sets of 3. 3 items together is an invitation to misfortune. Things should come in pairs, in 4s, in any number but 3. 3 is a powerful number, yes. The Holy Trinity. But power cuts both ways, and 3 objects placed carelessly together can form a kind of doorway, a passage through which unwanted things might enter. Outside, her husband Richard is already at work in the mill. The great wooden wheel turns constantly, powered by the stream, its creaking and splashing a sound so familiar that the household no longer truly hears it. But Richard is attentive this morning. He noticed, as he does every morning, which direction the wind was blowing when he first stepped outside. Wind from the east means storms and strife. Wind from the west means fair weather and rest. Wind from the north brings cold worth naught. Wind from the south brings food to the mouth. This morning, the wind comes from the south, and Richard is pleased. It's a good omen for the day's work. The grain will grind smoothly. The flour will be fine. Customers will be satisfied. He measures the grain carefully, pours it into the hopper, and watches as it begins its transformation. There's a rhythm to this work, a pattern he's learned over years. But even here, superstition guides him. He never, ever fills the hopper completely full. To fill anything to its absolute brim is to tempt fate, to suggest that you have so much that you need no more. And when you suggest such a thing, the powers that govern fortune take notice, and they begin to take away. Always leave room for more. Always show that you remain humble, that you understand your blessings are temporary, that you know your place in the great scheme of things. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, a young couple prepares for their wedding. The ceremony will take place in 3 days, on a Monday, because Monday is the day of new beginnings, of fresh starts. Never on a Friday. Never on the day marked by crucifixion and death. The bride, whose name is Emma, sits with her mother, sewing the final stitches on her wedding dress. It's not elaborate. Few things in the village are elaborate. But it's clean and new, and her mother has sewn small sprigs of rosemary into the hem, invisible to others but present nonetheless. Rosemary for fidelity. Rosemary for protection. Rosemary to ensure the marriage begins under favorable stars. Emma's mother works slowly, carefully, making sure each stitch is secure. She's thinking about all the things Emma will need to know, all the superstitions and protections that govern married life. Never wash clothes on New Year's Day, or you'll wash away a member of the family. Never bring old brooms into a new house, or you bring the old dirt and old troubles with you. Never refuse bread to a beggar at your door, or your own bread will never rise properly again. Never let your marriage bed face north, or your marriage will grow cold. There are so many rules. So many small things to remember. But they matter. They all matter. On the day of the wedding itself, Emma will step over the threshold of her new home with her right foot first. Her husband will carry her if necessary to ensure this happens correctly. And before they sleep that first night in their marriage bed, they'll place a knife under the mattress, point toward the headboard, to cut through any curses sent their way by jealous neighbors or malevolent spirits. These protections are gifts, passed from generation to generation, a kind of inheritance more valuable than gold or land. They are the accumulated wisdom of centuries, the survival strategies of people who lived close to the edge, who knew that the difference between life and death, between fortune and ruin, could hinge on the smallest actions. The afternoon sun filters through gaps in the shutters, casting bars of light across Emma's lap as she sews. Dust motes float in the light, moving in currents too subtle to feel. Her mother hums softly, a tune without words, and the moment is peaceful, suspended, almost holy in its quiet domesticity. But even here, even in this moment of calm preparation, the superstitions are present. The needle must never be left threaded overnight. The scissors must not be placed point first into fabric. The dress must be completed before sunset on the day before the wedding, but not so early that it sits waiting for too long, gathering dust and possibly attracting the attention of envious eyes. Timing matters. Sequence matters. Everything has its proper place and moment. As evening approaches once more, the village begins its familiar transformation. Shops close. Shutters are fastened. Animals are secured in their pens and barns. And as families gather for their evening meals, they observe the rituals that have sustained them, the small ceremonies that make the difference between order and chaos. Salt is passed right hand to right hand, never across the table. To pass salt directly from hand to hand across a table is to pass bitterness, to introduce discord into the household. Better to set it down and let the other person pick it up. Bread is broken, never cut, at least not for the first serving. To cut bread before breaking it is to cut the bonds of family and friendship. And when the meal is finished, crumbs are carefully swept toward the hearth, toward the fire that is the heart of the home, so that whatever blessings they represent return to the center rather than being scattered and lost. These small actions, performed thousands of times over a lifetime, become more than habit. They become identity. They become the framework through which the world is understood and navigated. As full darkness settles over the village once more, Thomas and Margaret lie in their bed, the fire reduced to embers, the house settling into sleep. "Did you see the moon tonight?" Margaret whispers. Thomas nods in the darkness. A ring around it. They both know what this means. A ring around the moon predicts rain within 3 days. It's a reliable sign, one of the few that seems to hold true more often than not. But it's more than just a weather prediction. It's a reminder that the sky itself sends messages, that the heavens speak to those who know how to listen. Margaret turns onto her side, pulling the blanket closer. She's thinking about the week ahead, about the tasks that need completing before the rain comes. There's wool to be carded. There's wood to be stacked. There are 100 small preparations that need to be made. But for now, there's only this moment, this quiet darkness, this temporary peace. Tomorrow will bring its own concerns. Tonight, they rest. The medieval world was harsh. Life was short. Disease was common. Death was always close. But superstition provided a framework, a way of understanding, a sense that there were rules to follow, and if you followed them carefully enough, you might survive. You might even thrive. And so the superstitions persisted, generation after generation, becoming woven into the fabric of daily life so thoroughly that people no longer thought of them as superstitions at all. They were simply the way things were. The way things had always been. The way things would always be. The night deepens further still. In Beatrice's cottage, the old woman tends her small fire, adding herbs that fill the room with soothing scents. She's thinking about the girl, Sarah, whose animals produced blood instead of milk. She's thinking about the whispers, the suspicions, the dangerous undercurrent of fear that runs through the village. She knows she could help. She has a remedy, a combination of herbs that might ease whatever ailment has struck Sarah's livestock. But to offer help might be to confirm the suspicions. To demonstrate knowledge is to demonstrate power, and power, in the hands of someone already suspected, becomes proof of wrongdoing. So she remains silent. She stays in her cottage. She tends her own small garden and her own small fire and hopes that the storm of suspicion passes her by. This is another truth of superstition. It creates not only the fear of malevolent powers, but also the fear of being accused of possessing those powers. The very protections people create against witchcraft make them vigilant for signs of witchcraft, and that vigilance can turn, quickly and terribly, against the innocent. But of course, nothing lasts forever. The medieval world eventually gave way to new ages, new ideas. Science began to explain what magic once had. Streetlights pushed back the darkness. Books spread knowledge that had once been whispered from person to person. The forests were cleared. The wolves were hunted to extinction. The night became less frightening, less full of mystery. And yet, even now, centuries later, traces remain. We still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes. We still avoid breaking mirrors. We still throw salt over our shoulders and knock on wood and carry lucky charms. We still feel uneasy about certain numbers, certain days. Friday the 13th still carries a shadow of its medieval dread. The superstitions have faded, softened, become habits rather than beliefs, but they haven't disappeared entirely. Perhaps they never will. Perhaps there's something in us that needs these small rituals, these tiny efforts to influence fate. Perhaps we're not so different from Eleanor and Thomas and Beatrice and Agnes, despite all our science and electricity and understanding. Perhaps we still need to believe that we have some control, some protection, some way of navigating the uncertain darkness. Perhaps we still understand, on some deep level, that the world is larger and stranger than we can fully comprehend, and that a little caution, a little respect for the unknown, is not such a foolish thing after all. But for now, let's leave the medieval village behind. Let's let them sleep, these people of long ago, in their small houses with their small fires and their small magics. Let's let them dream their omen-filled dreams in peace. The night is deep now. The world is quiet. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The creak of wooden beams settling. The whisper of wind through thatch. The distant sound of a stream running over stones. The slow, steady breathing of people sleeping, protected by their beliefs, wrapped in the comfort of knowing they've done what they can, followed the rules as best they understand them, and placed their trust in the ancient wisdom passed down through countless generations. And perhaps that's the real heart of superstition. Not the specific beliefs themselves, but the act of believing. The comfort of tradition. The sense of connection to those who came before. The feeling that you're not alone in the darkness, that others have walked this path and left markers to guide you, that their accumulated wisdom, however strange it might seem, is still a kind of gift, still a kind of love. And as for you, wherever you are, in whatever century you find yourself, perhaps you can let yourself drift now too. The story is finished. The night is quiet. There's nothing more you need to do tonight except rest. Let the medieval world fade back into history. Let the images dissolve like morning mist. Let yourself return to your own time, your own place, your own soft and comfortable present. The world outside continues, but you are safe here, warm and still. You can let your breathing slow even further. You can let your thoughts grow soft and distant, like voices heard from far away. You can let yourself sink into sleep, protected by whatever you believe protects you, whether it's horseshoes or prayers or simply the knowledge that you've done your best, that you've followed the rules as well as you could, that you've been kind and careful and attentive, and that's enough. That's always been enough. The journey back through time is complete. You've walked through medieval streets, sat by medieval fires, learned medieval fears and medieval hopes. And now you can let it all go, let it settle into memory, soft and distant and dreamlike. Sleep well, traveler through time. Sleep deeply and peacefully. May your dreams be gentle. May your rest be complete. May you wake to a new day with all your luck intact, with all your protections in place, with the certainty that you are safe and well and exactly where you need to be. The night wraps around you like a blanket. The darkness is soft, not frightening. And somewhere, in the space between waking and sleeping, between past and present, between the medieval village and your own quiet room, there is only peace. Only rest. Only the gentle drift toward sleep. Good night.